Welcome to a show host series. I am back after a week hiatus, and we're in a different recording room in our new Spaces and Kiln. And I love showing you all the different ways you can record easily for your show. I want to talk to you today about some of the things that might be weighing on you as a show host, whether you're a podcast host, a YouTube show host. Maybe you've been a host of a different kind of medium. I hope this speaks to you regardless, because something I think about all the time as a producer, talking with clients, as, a show host myself, there's some part of being a show host that's hard to put into words, but if you've experienced it, it can feel a little heavy or a little not sure what to do with the energy, and it can affect everything about your show. And so if you've never had the chance to just talk to another show host or a producer and kind of have a little vent session or a little validation session, I'm here to offer that to you. One thing that can be hard to put your finger on, but very real feeling as a show host, is feeling like you're doing it all by yourself. Like you have the whole show on your shoulders. You're responsible for everything that's being made, every word that's being said, whether it's worth people's time to watch or listen, how well the show does, how many people find it, the feedback. Like it can just feel like a ton of responsibility on your own shoulders as a show host. And I want to just put some things in perspective to hopefully maybe take a little of that weight off, or just to help validate that it is a big thing to be a show host. And I have these conversations weekly with clients. Literally, if I'm on the phone with a client or a show host or a potential show host or a current show host, we're probably talking about this feeling, this perception, like, am I doing enough? Am I good enough? How do I tell? Because I'm the show host, I'm the source, And so I want you to have a couple of questions to ask yourself, a couple thoughts to kind of run by if you've been feeling this way. One is, come back to the why of the show. This is so simple. It's so valuable. Don't skip it because it's simple. Anytime you feel this weight, like, should I keep going? Or, is this good enough? Or, this is a lot. I want you to think about why you're doing it, because that answer is so telling. And sometimes I ask this question to clients when we do like a mid-year check-in or an end of year, or we're prepping for another season. I'm like, why are you doing the show? Let's check back in. And sometimes the answer is the same as when you started, and sometimes it's not. And sometimes the original reason that you started the show no longer holds the same weight. You've evolved, the show has evolved, the experience has happened. And so sometimes that right there will give you enough clarity about whether you want to keep doing the show, whether you want to keep doing that version of the show, or whether you're actually ready to move into another version, another iteration, another chapter. That could look like a relaunch, a rebrand, a new season, sunsetting a show, starting a new show, maybe bringing in a co-host, changing up the format. There's so many cool things you can do with a show to take the asset you've created and move it into its next chapter. But I just want you to feel permission to answer that question honestly. Like, why are you making the show? So if you haven't done that recently, there's your permission slip. Second thing I would ask yourself is, what matters the most to me about the impact of the show? Because it's so easy, no matter who you are and how long you've been doing this, it's so easy to get caught up in the numbers or the perceived impact that the show is having. It's so easy to fall into comparisonitis. We've talked about this before on this series. And that's my job as a producer, to always be the reality check when a client's like, I just don't feel like, anyone's listening, or it's not big enough, or hasn't grown enough. The numbers actually are your friend in this situation, and they really can help to, whether you ask your production team, your producer, or just someone, like you yourself, can run into the back end of your show, whether it's your Apple Podcasts, your Spotify, your hosting service, your YouTube channel, wherever you look at your numbers, and actually look at the data and figure out, like, is this meaningful to me, like this level of impact, or do I need to look somewhere else? Do I need to ask for anecdotal feedback from my audience? Do I need to do a survey? Do I need to go out on social media and ask people how the show has impacted them? Be honest with yourself about what kind of feedback makes the most difference to you. Some people are numbers people, some people are, personal human stories, some people it's just maybe having a quiet moment and checking in with your heart. Like, do I feel like the impact of this show is still meaningful, and am I connected to those results in a way that matters to you? So those are the first two things I always check in with. When a show host that I'm talking to is like, I'm feeling a lot of weight and responsibility and not sure if this is good enough, why are you doing it, and what matters to you about the impact, and how can you check in with that instead of just the feeling you're having, right? And after you've done those two things, I invite you to take it a step further and maybe do a little bit of reality checking. Like if you've been comparing yourself to another show in your space, really be honest. Like, does that have a whole production team or a network behind it? Do you even know how many people work on that show versus you may be soloing it? You may have one assistant. You may have taken on a ton yourself. So check yourself with comparisonitis if you've like actually comparing yourself to like a full-time studio produced show versus a single person show. Do not expect yourself to ever produce the same kind of show that a full production team produces. And if you do have a lot of resources and you are putting a lot of time and money in and have a whole team on the show, think about, is everybody in their role being able to actually deliver the best they can do? Like, are things working effectively? Oftentimes I talk to a show host and they've kind of unintentionally taken a bunch of the work on themselves and their team is asking them to give the work back to them. That could be a control thing. That could just feel like you aren't doing enough and so you've secretly like taken a bunch on your plate. That's always a check-in I do with clients as well. Like, have you given enough to your team, whether that's an outsourced production team, your internal team, your assistant, whoever is helping you with your show? Are you actually letting them help, or have you actually just like done it all yourself and let them do like really tiny surface things? So check in with how much support you're letting yourself have and if there's more support available or if it's time to get support. The biggest transformation show hosts usually experience is when they let go of producing and they just let themselves be the talent, which is what we call the show host or the guest in the industry. So check in with that. Like, how much have you taken on your plate, and is there other places you should be putting a lot of that workload? The last thing I'll invite you to in this video kind of do, as we have this little heart to heart as a show host, is to think about what is exciting to you right now, where your energy is going as it relates to your show, and how you can keep that momentum sustainable. I think it's human nature to get really excited and launch a project and go with it until it gets mundane, hard, repetitive, plateaus, whatever, fill in the blank. And as we've talked about many times on this series, podcasts and YouTube shows are long games. Like they usually hit their stride years into it. And so sustainability is really the secret sauce here. And if you have kind of become disconnected from the fun, the energy, the nourishment, the excitement, the inspiration of the show, it's super important to plug back into that. That may look like taking a season break and doing a little sabbatical or a creative kind of reset or retreat. It may look like inviting in some new energy, like guest co-hosts, different types of guests, maybe changing up the format, maybe doing some live stuff that's unscripted or unplanned. There's so many ways to reconnect back to that, like creative inspiration or the fun of it. So if you haven't let yourself do that in a long time, I highly recommend it. And I hope that this video is just a, boost to you, because this is a long game if you're making great content on demand, online in 2024. There's such an amazing opportunity right now, and it's also very overwhelming and can feel just like the weight of the world on your shoulders when you're trying to make a great show. And there's a lot of unanswered questions, and there's a lot of newness, and there's a lot of like, how are other people doing it? So that's my pep talk to you today. Of course, I'm always available if you want to book a call or have a consultation or just have a question about how all this works. Feel free to leave a comment on the video or email me, Christine@worthfulmedia.com. Please subscribe to the channel. We're bringing you videos every week, and we'll see you soon.